People screamed as the police officer fired the taser, electric sparks cracking across the street. A blind, elderly veteran collapsed instantly, his cane skidding across the pavement. But the crowd fell silent when his retired military K-9, old, loyal, limping, tried to shield him, and took the second taser hit straight to the chest. He simply threw himself over his handler. The dog's agonizing cry echoed down the street. People screamed. Cars stopped. Phones came out. Stop. He's blind. That's a service dog. But the officers didn't listen. They surrounded the man as if he were a threat, pinning his shaking hands while he begged, "Please. My dog, where's my dog?" And then, before anyone understood what was happening, before the officers could take another step, the ground began to shake. A full military convoy rolled in, engines roaring, soldiers jumping out and surrounding the police with swift precision. Their commander pointed at the fallen man and roared, "Stand down now. That man is under our protection. Step away from him." The commander warned, "That man is one of ours. That man is a national hero." What happened next changed everything. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Henry Walker tapped his white cane gently against the pavement, counting each step as he moved slowly across the crosswalk. His retired military K-9, Shadow, walked faithfully at his side. Older now, but still alert, still loyal, still carrying the weight of battles long over. Cars waited patiently. People watched quietly. It was supposed to be an ordinary moment. Then everything changed. A frantic voice had called 911 minutes earlier, claiming a suspicious man with a weapon was threatening people at the intersection. Police didn't know the weapon was nothing more than a blind man's cane. They arrived fast, too fast, lights flashing, adrenaline high. "Sir, drop the object," an officer shouted. Henry froze, confused. I'm just crossing the street," he stammered, turning his head toward the sound. Unable to see where the voices came from, Shadow sensed the shift instantly. His ears shot up, muscles stiffening as he stepped protectively in front of Henry. A low growl rumbled from his throat. The officers panicked. "Back the dog off." Now, Henry reached out blindly. "Shadow? What's happening?" But before he could finish, a sharp crack split the air. The taser fired. Henry convulsed, collapsing hard onto the asphalt. His cane clattered away. Shadow lunged to shield him, only to be struck by a second blast. The old dog yelped, legs buckling beneath him. The entire street fell silent. Henry lay trembling on the asphalt, unable to move, his world reduced to ringing ears and burning nerves. He reached out blindly, fingers scraping the road. "Shadow? Shadow, where are you?" His voice cracked with fear. Shadow twitched a few feet away, his body shaking from the electric shock. The old K-9 tried desperately to crawl toward his handler, dragging himself inch by inch, nails scraping the pavement. His whines cut through the silence like a knife. People began shouting, "He's blind." Someone yelled, "That's a service dog. Stop restraining him." Another cried, but the officers hesitated, unsure, their earlier confidence dissolving as they looked at the elderly man struggling to breathe and the dog fighting to reach him. One officer knelt beside Henry, gripping his wrists, still treating him like a threat. "Stay down," he barked. "I can't see. My dog." Henry gasped, tears mixing with dust on his face. Among the crowd, a young woman knelt beside Shadow. She noticed a faded metal tag attached to his vest, U.S. Army K-9. Emergency contact below it. A phone number, scratched, but readable, with shaking hands. She unlocked her phone and dialed it, unaware the number didn't lead to a shelter or a veterinarian. It connected directly to a restricted military line, and that call was about to change everything. The phone rang only once before a deep, commanding voice answered. "Military emergency line. State your code." The young woman froze. I'm calling about a dog. A service dog. He's hurt. There was an incident with the police." The voice sharpened instantly. "Identify the K-9." She read the number from Shadow's tag. Silence followed. Cold, stunned silence. Then the voice returned, clipped and urgent. "Where is the handler? Is he alive?" The woman glanced at the scene. Officers hovering over Henry, the old veteran trembling, struggling to breathe. He's hurt too. Very badly. A beat of silence. Then everything shifted. Do not let them move the dog or the handler, the voice ordered. You've just triggered a code guardian. Stay where you are. Military units are already en route. The call ended abruptly. Meanwhile, Henry drifted in and out of consciousness. He heard distant voices, confused shouts, the trembling whines of Shadow fighting to reach him. His hands searched desperately across the pavement, but he found only cold asphalt. An officer leaned over him, finally noticing the dog tags hanging from Henry's neck. His face paled. Another officer spotted the faded military tattoo on Shadow's inner ear, recognition dawning far too late that a storm was coming, and the police had no idea what they had just set in motion. At first, no one understood the low rumble rolling through the streets. Store windows vibrated. Car alarms chirped. Birds exploded from trees as if fleeing danger. The officers glanced around uneasily, hands drifting toward their holsters. Then the sound grew louder, deeper, heavier. Engines. Lots of them. A moment later, the corner of the street flooded with movement. A full military convoy roared in, tires screaming as armored vehicles sealed off every exit. Black SUVs, Humvees, and a tactical medical truck boxed the police in with ruthless precision. Crowds gasped. Officers staggered back in shock. From the lead vehicle, a tall man in a decorated uniform leaped out, broad shoulders, stern jaw, eyes blazing with outrage. Soldiers followed him, fanning out with practiced discipline. Weapons lowered but ready. The commander stormed straight toward the officers restraining Henry. His voice cracked like thunder. Who tossed my handler? The street froze. The officers stared at him, stunned, speechless. The commander dropped to one knee beside Henry, gently lifting his head, his voice softening instantly. Henry, it's Colonel Mason. Stay with me. He turned to the medics. Get him, and the dog stabilized now. Shadow whimpered weakly as two military medics carefully slid him onto a stretcher. Another soldier saluted the injured K9 before lifting him. The commander rose, fury returning to his face as he faced the police. You assaulted one of our most decorated veterans, he said coldly. And that dog, he pointed, has saved more lives than every officer on this street combined. The crowd erupted. Henry lay on the stretcher, oxygen mask trembling with each uneven breath. Shadow, still twitching from the shock, was placed beside him in the military medical truck. The old dog lifted his head weakly, nudging Henry's hand with a soft, broken whine. Colonel Mason stood outside, facing the stunned police officers. His voice carried across the entire block. You want to know who you attacked today? Every officer froze. This man, Mason said, pointing to Henry, is Sergeant Henry Walker. 3 tours, 2 silver stars. And that dog, Shadow, is a retired U.S. Army K9 who served with him every single day. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Mason continued, anger sharpening each word. On their last mission, an IED detonated beside their convoy. Shadow threw himself on Henry to shield him from the blast. That's why Henry is blind. That's why Shadow walks with a limp. He paused, jaw tight. They saved 14 soldiers that day. Several officers looked down, shame flooding their faces. Inside the truck, Henry stirred. Shadow pushed his nose into Henry's palm, finally reaching the man he had tried so desperately to protect. Henry let out a trembling sigh of relief. The crowd watched, many wiping tears. Colonel Mason's voice softened. You didn't just hurt a veteran, he said. You hurt a hero team. Hours later, the hospital hallway buzzed with tension. Police officials, military officers, and reporters crowded the entrance, waiting for updates. Behind closed doors, Henry and Shadow lay in adjoining beds, each hooked to monitors, each fighting through the pain. Colonel Mason stepped out of the room, his expression firm. The officers involved will face a full federal investigation, he announced. Effective immediately, they're suspended. A ripple of gasps moved through the hall. Inside, Henry slowly opened his eyes. His world was still darkness, but he felt a warm, familiar weight pressing against his arm. Shadow, bandaged, exhausted, had crawled onto the bed, resting his head on Henry's chest. Henry smiled weakly and stroked his partner's ear. You're still here, buddy. You never leave me, do you? Shadow's tail tapped softly against the blanket. Colonel Mason entered quietly, placing something cold and metallic into Henry's hand. "This is for your service," he said. "And for tonight." Henry ran his fingers over the metal, tears pooling in his eyes. "You never needed your sight to be a hero," Mason added gently. "Shadow always saw the hero in you." The camera pans out, an old veteran, his loyal dog, and a nation finally recognizing what they endured together. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of loyalty, courage, and sacrifice.